Welcome to Chapter 17 of The Divide. Please like and subscribe. Back across the forest, the sun was beginning to dip below the tree line, darkening the battle zone where Julia and her team stood, yet again victorious. To Julia's surprise, laughter and chatter filled the air as their team celebrated their final win against the other teams. Clarice and Julia even high-fived each other on their last victory. Although, to be honest, Clarice thought Julia was Yuki for a split second. But nevertheless, it happened, and Clarice didn't cringe away afterwards. The day's games, however, weren't over yet. A new challenge awaited, one that would shift the playful atmosphere into something more serious. "All right, you bubbly, girly warriors," announced Miss Myrtle, her voice carrying a hint of gravity. "You're up against the seniors now, and we're switching to pellet guns. These have more force, more realism, but don't worry, safety gear is mandatory." Clarice and the other girls had gotten this far many times before, so they knew the drill. While they started gearing up, Yolanda walked Julia through the process. "Getting hit with a paintball sucks," she mentioned, "but these pellets sting way worse. Well, okay, not like a bullet or like your leg getting torn off. Anyway, awkward. My point is, most important is your helmet. Everyone goes for headshots, so make sure your helmet is on tight, your visor is down, and your mouth guard in." Julia nodded to show that she understood as she began to put on her pads and helmet. Suddenly, Bree spoke out. "Oh, we're so dead." All the girls looked up at a clearing in the forest to see the seniors that they would be facing. "Bleepin' Death Squad, man!" Yolanda shouted out as they saw Ryan leading the way along with 4 others. "Death Squad?" Julia asked. "Your swimmer boy and his team are like undefeated," Yolanda replied. "They even beat some seniors from last year when they were juniors." This is gonna sting." Clarice, never one to show weakness, spoke up. "You must be reading their minds and what they're thinking about us when we shoot them. Well, not Julia, she's a bad shot, but they're worried about the rest of us." Yolanda laughed before she replied. "Whatever? They beat us like 10 times last year. Yeah, we're so dead." Throughout the chatter and shade thrown from Clarice, Julia's heart couldn't help but race as she noticed Ryan. Suddenly, they made eye contact. Julia smiled as she waved towards him. Ryan smiled and waved back. He then put down his giant bag and began to prepare his gear. Yolanda approached Julia to give her a friendly warning. "No more making butterfly eyes with your boy toy, Julia. If he won't shoot you, his team sure will. And just FYI, he will shoot you. Your guy, Aquaman over there, he's like serious about this stuff." Julia gave a slight smile and answered, "He'll have to not get shot by me first." "Trust me," Yolanda replied, "he won't." "Oh well, at least this'll all be over quick." Julia continued to gear up. As she did, she eyed Ryan's team and asked Yolanda as many questions as she could about them. Next to Ryan was a thin girl with her head shaven, giving off a punk rock vibe. Her name was Lena, and she had an air of quiet confidence as she helped check Ryan's gear and whispered strategy. Beside Lena stood Alec, basically a boy version of Bree. His hair was a wild mop of curls, and his eyes were sharp, analyzing the field with precision. Alec was their heavy gunner, his pellet gun modified for rapid fire and his vest adorned with extra ammo clips. To Alec's left was Sydney. Her uniform was fitted with extra padding, allowing her to dive and roll with ease. Julia watched as Sydney's eyes darted around, likely mapping out every possible route and escape. And finally there was Marco. He seemed like the strategist. He had a slight build with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, giving him an almost bookish appearance. His pellet gun was placed on his back, showing he was less for direct combat and more for directing the team with hand signals. The 4 of them, with Ryan, looked focused, calm, seasoned, not at all worried about pellets hitting them. A stark contrast to the nervous energy of Julia and the rest of the red team. The match was about to begin, and Clarice gathered the team in a small huddle, her eyes scanning each of them critically. And in typical Clarice fashion, she had one message: don't mess this up. The teams took their position, the air thick with anticipation. The whistle blew, and Miss Myrtle clicked down on her timer. The forest then erupted into a symphony of rustling leaves, whispered commands, and the sharp cracks of pellets against wood. Julia's team moved with a mix of determination and apprehension, knowing deep down that they would probably lose. Julia, positioned as the tip of the spear at Claire's insistence, darted through the underbrush, her movements swift, her eyes scanning for any sign of Ryan's team. Behind her, Bree lumbered, her shield up, ready to absorb any incoming fire. And behind Bree was Clarice ducking down. Yolanda was perched high, her eyes through the scope, while Yuki vanished into the shadows, her role to disrupt and misdirect. It was obvious that they had a feel for the fight, but they didn't really have a plan. Ryan's team, however, operated like a well-oiled machine. Alec, the heavy gunner, laid down suppressing fire, forcing Julia and Bree to take cover and scattering Clarice. Sydney quickly used her agility to flank and get behind Clarice and Yolanda. Marco, from a safe position, directed the flow of the battle. Julia's team tried to advance, but each move was countered. Yuki's attempts to outmaneuver were met with Sydney's sudden appearance, her pellets tagging not only Yuki, but also Bree. Bree, with a grunt, fell back, with her shield being hit over and over by heavy shots. Yolanda, ever the sniper, managed to take down Alec, her shot a clean hit from her sniper's nest. But not before Alec had marked Clarice's position, who was trying to flank Lena. This led to a swift headshot from Ryan to Clarice, taking her out of the match just as it began. This, of course, led Clarice to yell out in bitter frustration, "Where was my team?" Julia, with only Yolanda left, found herself now caught in a trap. Marco had predicted her movements, leading her into a clearing where Ryan, from his sniper's position, had a clear shot. Ryan's finger hovered over the trigger, his eyes locked on to Julia. However, there was a hesitation, and it was visible, a conflict etched across his face. "Ryan, now!" Lena hissed, her voice urgent from her spotter's position. But Ryan couldn't pull the trigger. His head shook back and forth as if clearing out the cobwebs. "It's not her!" Lena suddenly cried out, her voice cutting through the tension. Then, with a swift move, Lena adjusted her aim and fired, the pellet striking Julia in her chest. Julia flinched, more from surprise and pain, as the pellet hit her vest. Yolanda easily then spotted Lena and fired multiple shots her way, hitting her throughout her body. "Take that, you freaking bald hippie," Yolanda spoke out, upset that she had shot Julia. Finally, the sound of a few more pellets filled the air as Marco tagged Yolanda, ending the game. The forest fell silent. Ryan lowered his rifle, a mixture of relief and regret in his eyes, while Lena gave him a look that was part reassurance and part reprimand. Miss Myrtle blew her whistle and called the match. "Game goes to the seniors. What a surprise. And the Powerpuff Girls get mopped again. Faster than ever, I might add. And you know the problem I'm seeing with you girls is..." As Miss Myrtle continued her "you are losers" speech, Julia could only think of one thing. What did Lena mean when she shouted out, "It's not her"?